Shabbat Shalom Yasharallah. Welcome to week 4 of this week's Torah portion. Let's get started with the ram's horn shofar blast. If you don't have a trumpet, just give a shout of praise as we do this. On his Shabbat, let's let Hasatan know his people are here. All together, let's do it. Very good, very good. So yes, already in week 4, we will be covering chapters 11 through 13 in the book of Genesis today, which will include the infamous Tower of Babel. Let's get started with a prayer. Haile Abba, we come to you as humble servants seeking guidance, counsel, and understanding of your divine word, seeking divine purpose in each and one of our lives. I pray that you answer our prayers in your perfect timing, Abba, and that you allow us to be molded and to walk as Mashiach has walked. Please guide this message through the Ruach Kodesh and give us understanding and enlightenment on not just this message, but throughout the week in our decision makings and all that we do, Abba, that we do it in a way that baraks your kingdom and does nothing but bless those around us. In all that we do, Bahashem Yasha, Amen. And Amen. All right. Once again, we will be starting off where we left off in Genesis chapter 11, verse 1. So without further ado, let's do it. All right, y'all know the deal. I'm going to try to get the sound going. Let me know if it's working for y'all. Y'all heard that? Y'all heard that right? Did y'all hear that? No. Oh, of course y'all didn't. Of course y'all didn't. Okay, 1 second. Let me just share one more time. I'm going to try one more time here. All right, little black screen there. Don't worry about it. We back on it. I'm sure this is going to work. Let's go.
Now the whole world had one language and a common form of speech. And as people journeyed eastward, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." So they used brick instead of stone and tar instead of mortar. "Come," they said, "let us build for ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of all the earth." Then the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the sons of men were building. And the Lord said, "If they have begun to do this as one people, speaking the same language, then nothing they devise will be beyond them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them from there over the face of all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel, for there the Lord confused the language of the whole world, and from that place the Lord scattered them over the face of all the earth.
All right, we're going to stop at verse 9 here. We just read 1 through 9 of chapter 11, which is a summary of the Tower of Babel. And so we're going to start off with verse 1. I'm going to go in the Aramaic Targum, just for verse 1 here. And all the earth was of one language and one speech and one counsel. In the holy language spoke they, that by which the world had been created at the beginning. And this can only make logical sense. If everyone had one language, this had to be the language that was given to Adam, the first man, because everyone would be speaking it if it came from the original, right? And if it was given to Adam, then this had to be the language that Mashiach spoke, Abba spoke. Everyone was speaking the same language, and it was given to man by our Creator. So let's go into that. We're going to go into the prelude of the book of Sirach. Here we go. And so we see here they have it labeled as chapter 0 before the book begins. And it's going to be in the second section that says 15 through 26. And I'm going to zoom in so we can get a little bit closer. We're going to read regarding this holy language that everyone had in the beginning. You are urged, therefore, to read with good will and attention, and to be indulgent in cases where, despite our diligent labor in translating, we may seem to have rendered some phrases imperfectly. For what was originally expressed in Hebrew does not have exactly the same sense when translated into another language. Not only this work, but even the law itself, the prophecies, and the rest of the books differ not a little as originally expressed. And so clearly what's being said here is that we want to try to get to the root of these things. And the root of scriptural matters of the language is Hebrew. On that note, I have a study called this right here, The Ancient Hebrew Language and Alphabet. Is honestly more of a reading from a book instead of in-depth study, but it's just the intro to what language everyone was speaking in the beginning. Ancient Hebrew, that are pictographs, as we see in the background here. These pictures is the original language of Hebrew. So if you're interested in that, you can go watch this study. But that, to my understanding, is what was being spoken and written before the Tower of Babel, or Babel. Now we're going to go into Genesis, Jasher, chapter 9. Corresponding with this very topic of the Tower of Babel. Verses 20 through 39. Obviously, starting off where we left off in the book of Jasher from last week as well. Verse 20. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to zoom in as much as I can at times. All right, that's a little better here. And King Nimrod reigned securely, and all the earth was under his control. And all the earth was of one tongue in words of union. And all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together, put Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan with their families. So this is Ham, right? And they said to each other, come, let us build ourselves a city, and in it a strong tower, in its top reaching heaven. And we will make ourselves famed, so that we may reign upon the whole world, in order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us, that we may reign mightily over them, and that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars. And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words, and the king agreed with them in this affair, and he did so. And all the families assembled, consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extension piece of ground to build the city and the tower, and they sought in the whole earth, and they found none at the east of the land of Shinar, about 2 days' walk, journeyed there, and they dwelt there. Verse 24. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin. And they began to build it. And whilst they were building against the Adon Elohim of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. And all these people and all the families divided themselves to 3 parts. The first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. The second said, we will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them. And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears. And Elohim knew all their works and all their evil thoughts. And he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And when they were building, they built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower. And on account of its height, and the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it until those who went up had completed a full year. And after that, they reached to the builders and gave them the mortar and the bricks. Thus it was done daily. So obviously they had a big full rotation of men. Thousands was said up to 600,000 men. And that was just speaking about men. That was building this city. Verse 28. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would all weep over it. And if a man fell and died, none of them will look at it. So the tower clearly has become an idol. These bricks and the bricks and mortar or whatever they were using is more valuable than a man's life. Verse 29. And the Adon knew their thoughts, and it came to pass when they were building, they cast the arrows towards the heaven, and all the arrows fell upon them, filled with blood. And when they saw them, they said to each other, oh, excuse me. Okay, where is it? Where am I? Okay, here we go. Surely we have slain all those that are in heaven. For this was from the Adon in order to correct error, and in order to destroy them from off the face of the ground. And they built the tower in the city, and they did this thing daily until many days and years were elapsed. And Elohim said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their language, their tongues, which is languages, that one man should not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them. Verse 33, and from that day following, they forgot each man his neighbor's tongue, and they could not understand to speak in one tongue. When the builder took from the hands of his neighbor's lime or stone, which he did not order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbor, that he would die. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this manner. And the Adon smote the 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, we will ascend to heaven and serve our gods, became like apes and elephants, which reminds me of the story of Nebuchadnezzar. His pride led him becoming like a beast creature. Then those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, the Adon killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbor. And the third division of those who said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, the Adon scattered them throughout the earth. And those who were left amongst them, when they knew and understood the evil which was coming upon them, they forsook the building, and they became scattered upon the face of the whole earth. Verse 37. And they ceased building the city in the tower. Therefore he called that place Babel, for there the Adon confounded the language of the whole earth. Behold, it was at the east of the land of Shinar, and as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up 1/3 part of thereof. The fire also descended from heaven and burned another third. A third is left to this day, and it is of that part which was aloft, and its circumference is 3 days' walk. Many of the sons of men died in that tower, a people without number. Man, I mean, completely tragic story with this tower. The tower itself became an idol, and people were just dying over this tower for it to never fully be completed. And so we're going to go back up to highlight verse 32 here. And Elohim said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them. So going back into Genesis, we see in verse 7, come, let us go down and confuse their language. It doesn't really express who he's speaking to. In the book of Jasher, it clearly makes it clear that it is the angels and the amount of angels. So this is 70 angels coming down to confuse their languages. 70 is a pretty big number in scripture. So we're going to go back to the book of Jasher. Later in the book of Jasher, we see these 70 angels that create 70 languages within the story of Joseph. Giving a little sneak peek of the story of Joseph in chapter 48, verse 45. So chapter 48, verse 45 in the book of Jasher. We see this in play. Verse 45. If he was of one of the common people, he ascended to the third step. So just a quick summary of what we're reading about. We're reading that Joseph's in Egypt at the steps of Pharaoh. There are 70 steps up to Pharaoh's throne, and that is what's being spoken about here in verse 45. So if was one of a common people, he ascended to the third step of the throne, and the king would descend to the fourth to speak to him. And their custom was moreover that man who understood to speak in all the 70 languages, he ascended to the 70 steps and went up and spoke till he reached the king. So he would go through each step, speaking each language until he would reach the 70th step, which would be right in front of the throne of Pharaoh, which, spoiler alert, Joseph does it. Which is one of the biggest reasons why he was able to become overseers, because of his wisdom that was given to him by the Most High. So we see now going all the way back down, chapter 9 again, verse 32, when he says, let us go down, the angels, and 70 would be the count of those. So now this takes to the Septuagint. In the Septuagint, chapter 32 of the book of Deuteronomy. And once again, if I'm using the Septuagint or Targum, it's because it isn't really worded this way in a modern day translation such as the KJV, ESV, Sefer, etc. So in the Septuagint, Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 and 9, this is speaking about the timing of the Tower of Babel. When the Most High divided the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the nations according to the number of the angels of Allahim. We see that connection verse there? How did he divide the nations? I believe in the like KJV Masoretic, it says according to the number of I'll double check real quick. It reads a little bit different. Deuteronomy 28 verse 8. Oop, no. Wrong chapter. Yeah, according to the number of the children of Israel, Yasharallah. Quite a bit of difference there. So the Septuagint says according to the number of the angels. And as we read in Jasher, that ties in perfectly. It makes sense. The 70 angels created the 70 nations and gave 70 languages. That makes sense, right? Now, continuing in verse 9 here, and his people, Yaakov, Jacob, became the portion of the Adon. Yasharallah was the line of his inheritance. So we have 70 nations. These are 70 Gentile nations. And then you have the nation that was made a covenant through Abraham. And then Isaac, and then Jacob, which is why it says Jacob was his portion. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So the 70 nations became portions to the other angels. Yasharallah, through Abraham, became the portion of the Most Highs. I actually have a study on that. I think that study. There's multiple studies touching on the idea of the structure of this hierarchy. One of the studies I have is called Ye Are Gods. I can't remember the other one, but that's a good study to start off with either way. All right. And now with that understanding, going from Deuteronomy 32, we're going to go into Acts, thinking about the languages being changed at the Tower of Babel so it would create confusion. Well, this is exactly what the Most High undoes with the power of tongues in the book of Acts. Chapter 2, verse 1 through 6. And when the day of Shavuot, Pentecost, was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place, and suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire. It's a ruach. And it sat upon each of them, and they were all filled with the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, the set-apart Spirit. And let's remember that set-apart Spirit. And while we're on it, we reading Holy Ghost. Don't use ghost. Do not use ghosts. Ghost is something that is dead. That's what a ghost is, guys. Something that's dead. A spirit is alive. Call it Holy Spirit if we're speaking English. I'm just going to let y'all know. Their wordplay matters. The power's in our tongue, okay? So at least let's not curse what we're speaking highly of, right? So the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, or the set-apart Spirit would be the best English way of saying that, and began to speak with other tongues as the Ruach gave them utterance. And there were dwelling There were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men, out of every nation under heaven. So all the nations dispersed, speaking different tongues. Verse 6, now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and was confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. So you probably heard so many different doctrines or just teachings on tongues. As the shirt I'm wearing right now, I don't know if you can see it that small, it says, make it make sense with Scripture. Make it make sense with Scripture. What is tongues? Simply put, tongues by itself simply means language. Speaking tongues is speaking multiple different languages. This is how the gospel will be spread throughout the entire world, through the power of tongues. That is a gift that not everyone receives, obviously, through the Ruach Kodesh, but it's one of the many gifts of the Spirit. So that's the whole wrapped up story of the Tower of Babel, beginning with one holy language, to the disbursement, to the Ruach Kodesh, bringing it back together for the purpose of spreading his divine message. Everything is in its divine order, per the usual with Abba. And on that note, just wanted to hit the last verse, verse 9 in the Septuagint, just as a clarification that Babel literally means confusion. On this account, its name was called Confusion. Babel. And ironically, I know y'all probably seen that there's a app that helps you learn languages called Babel, which is in like oxymoron. Because if you're trying to learn other languages, you shouldn't be calling it confusion. I mean, but that's what people do, right? They're just trying to play on the Bible. All right. Oh, gotta reshare. Quick black screen. Don't panic. Do not panic. Okay. The remaining of the chapter is the genealogy from Shem to Abram. Get it.
This is the account of Shem. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad. And after he had become the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arphaxad was 35 years old, he became the father of Shelah. And after he had become the father of Shelah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah was 30 years old, he became the father of Eber. And after he had become the father of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber was 34 years old, he became the father of Peleg. And after he had become the father of Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg was 30 years old, he became the father of Reu. And after he had become the father of Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu was 32 years old, he became the father of Serug. And after he had become the father of Serug, Reu lived 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug was 30 years old, he became the father of Nahor. And after he had become the father of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor was 29 years old, he became the father of Terah. And after he had become the father of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. This is the account of Terah. Terah became the father.
Oops. I said remainder of this chapter. So 10 through 26 was genealogy from Shem to Abraham. So before we get on that next part, let's go and just look at this timeline. Once again, I'm on BecomeSetApart.com, guys. I want to keep showing y'all a lot of the times I'm using this because I get asked for resources and a lot of people don't know that it's on the website. So that's under study tools right there. Click it. Oh, we gotta wait for real live loading here. I got all this other stuff opened. Ain't gonna help. But we're practicing patience though. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Let's practice patience. All right. And so just doing a quick look here. That was the pre-flood went over. Scrolling down so slow and gently. All right. So we see Shem, our Faxlix, Selah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, and Terah to Abraham. Yes, the ages started to decrease at post-flood dramatically, and things started to change. You know, the days of the pre-flood, it's a different world than the post-flood. But there's still nothing new under the sun. Still a lot of similarities, but of course there are some differences. All right. Just wanted to do a quick look at that so y'all can remember to go look at this. I'm telling you guys, don't just, use this because I'm using it now. When you're doing your own studies, having a visual. That's what I have this poster on my wall right in front of me. I don't know how many times I'm doing something and goes, well, that means that should line up. What time frame? It's not about it being perfect. It's just to give you an idea and line up some points, as I touched on before about like Peleg and the Tower of Babel. It makes the visual makes sense of why Peleg is when things were divided. All right. And we're going to read a quick 4 verses in the book of Jasher, corresponding to this very time. Verses 1 through 4. And Peleg, the son of Eber, died in those days in the 48th year of the life of Abraham, son of Terah. And all the days of Peleg was 239 years. And when the Adon has scattered the sons of men on account of their sin at the tower. And I just want to point out, why do you think it talks about Peleg right in between the story of Babel? Because of what it said his whole name means. When the earth was divided. Peleg, that's what his name means. Why it's mentioning him. His purpose in the timings in orders. And when the Adon had scattered the sons of men on account of their sin at the tower, behold, they spread forth into many divisions. And all the sons of men were dispersed into the 4 corners of the earth, each according to its language, its land, and city. So we're just seeing that the language and the people were one and the same. That's how they were divided. And we see that through divine spiritual, because everything physical is manifested spiritually. which is why we don't eat unclean foods, because it will defile us spiritually, not just physically. Verse 4, the sons of men built many cities according to their families in all the places where they went throughout the earth, where the Adon has scattered them. All right, and we'll stop right there for this section. And let's now finish Genesis 11, verses 27 through 35. 32, excuse me. And I'll read this little section here. This is the account of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. During his father Terah's lifetime, Haran died in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. And we're going to stop there. And we're going to go to the book of Jasher to see how this happened, because Haran's life is recorded, or his death, I should say, is recorded in the book of Jasher, and it's actually pretty tragic. So let's go to the book of Jasher for this testimony. And it's recorded in chapter 7. We're going to read verse 41 and 42 to set the standards here. Let's understand who Terah is, first and foremost, the father of Abraham. Verse 41 and 42 gives us a snippet of that. And he placed Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of his hosts, and he had dignified him and elevated him above all his princes. This is speaking of Nimrod. And while saying Nimrod put Terah in this position, verse 42, and while as he was reigning according to his heart's desire, after having conquered all his enemies around, he advised with his counselors to build a city for his palace, and they did so. So just setting the standard that Terah was there for the tower and everything with Nimrod, and he was a captain of the host, or prince of the host for Nimrod. Crazy if you never read the book of Jasher to know that Abraham's dad was prince of the host of Nimrod's army during the Tower of Babel. Is kind of mind-blowing. So, continuing now, we're going to go to verse 49 through 51 in the same chapter 7 of Jasher. And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king. And, I lost my spot. And his subjects and the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him very highly. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amtheo, the daughter of Corneo, whichever. The wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days. And Terah was 70 years old when he begat him. And Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days and dignified him above all his that were with him. And so before we continue, we're going to skip a lot from the book of Jasher, because the book of Jasher is very, very dense on the stories and some of the just storylines of it. It's very descriptive. And so I want to give a quick point out to the story of Abraham. The story of Abraham is a line-by-line story reading of Abraham. It's in two parts because there's just that much meat of the life of Abraham, from his birth, which is what we're about to skip over because it's just that long. His birth to his childhood to his upbringing in the house of Shem and Noah is all recorded in the book of Jasher, and it is read in this study that we will not be covering in the Torah portions. All right. that being said, back to the book of Jasher, we will be jumping now that we read in chapter 7, establishing Terah. Now we're getting back to where we were at with the of Haran in his death. We're going to chapter 12 here. We're going to be reading verses 15 through 40. Let us read. And the king said, who advised thee to this? Tell me, do not hide aught from me, and then thou shalt not die. So, quick summary. Terah had a prophetic message that Abraham will become a great man that will conquer kings. Nimrod heard of this message through the divine message in the heavens, the stars, and he wanted Abraham dead. Terah hid Abraham, and then he's finding out through a bunch of events now that Terah lied to him, and so now he's asking, did someone advise you to lie and go against my commands for bringing your son to die? And that is what's being responded to in verse 16. Let's read. And Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence. And he said to the king, it was Haran, my eldest son, who advised me to do this. And Haran was in those days that Abram was born 32 years old, so a grown man. Verse 17. And Haran did not advise his father to anything, for Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul from the king, for he feared greatly. And the king said to Terah, Haran, thy son who advised thee to this shall die through fire with Abram, because Abram's a grown man at this point now. For the sentence of death is upon him for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. And Haran at that time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. Man, I'm just going to pause for a second there. Yes, this is a tragic story that Terah betrayed his oldest son. Absolutely. But it's also a tragic story based on verse 18 that we're going to see him die because of his lack of faith. He inclined to follow the ways of Abraham, which was the ways of the Most High. He saw that they were good, but he had no faith. Ye of little faith. Yes, lukewarm. So many ways you can describe these type of people. So let's read and visualize. What will happen to anyone that is on the line and they don't want to pick a side? You can't. There's either good or evil. So, only two sides on Judgment Day. And Haran said in his heart, behold, now the king has seized Abram on account of these things which Abram did. And it shall come to pass that if Abram prevail the king, that the king I will follow him, but if the king prevail, I will go after the king. So you see what he's doing. He's playing both sides. This is why I thought it was important to read about the death of Haran. You know, obviously I'm following the storyline given to us in Genesis, but this speaks volumes for anyone. This is a testimony for us to learn from. Being on the fence is dangerous. Let's keep reading. Let me stop talking. Verse 20. And when Terah had spoken this to the king concerning Haran, his son, the king ordered Haran to be seized with Abram. And they brought them both, Abram and Haran, his brother, to cast them into the fire. And all the inhabitants of the land and the king's servants and princes and all the women and the little ones were there, standing that day over them. And the king's servants took Abram and his brother, and they stripped them of all their clothes, excepting their lower garments, which were them. And they bound their hands and feet with linen cords, And the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. And the Adon loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. And the Adon came down and delivered Abram from the fire, and he was not burned. And all the cords with which they bound him were burned, while Abram remained and walked about in the fire. And I'm going to just go ahead and take a quick stop here. I'm going to take a quick stop. Oh, you know what? I'll wait to the end. I see what I got. I got it set up. Yeah. Let's wait to the end. Okay. Let's keep reading. Y'all already know what this story reminds y'all of, right? The book of Daniel. We'll be going to that in a second. Okay. All right. Verse 26. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But I'll get to that foreshadowing that Abraham did it first, right? Was walking in the midst of the fire, untouched and unfazed. Verse 26. And Haran died when they had cast him into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with the Adon. And those men who cast him into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned, and 12 men of them died. And Abram walked in the midst of the fire 3 days and 3 nights. And all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire, and they came and told the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire. And even the lower garments which are upon him are not burned, but the cords which he was bound is burned. And when the king heard their words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe them. So he sent other faithful princes to see this matter, and they went and saw it and told it to the king. And the king rose to go and see it, and he saw Abram walking to and fro in the midst of the fire, and he saw Haran's body burned, and the king wondered greatly. And the king ordered Abram to be taken out from the fire, and his servants approached to take him out, and they could not, for the fire was around about, and the flame ascending towards them from the furnace. And the king's servants fled from it, and the king rebuked them, saying, Make haste and bring Abram out of the fire, that you shall not die. And the servants of the king again approached to bring Abram out, and the flames came upon them and burned their faces, so that 8 of them died. So you see what he's doing, right? He's saying that the fire isn't going to burn you because it's not burning him. Now go and pull him out. That's what Nimrod's saying. He's literally sending them to their death. He's like, you're going to show me if this fire is going to kill you or not. Because if it kills you, then, oh my goodness, this is crazy. If it doesn't, then he's a magician of sorts, right? Verse 32. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire, lest they should be burned, the king called to Abram, O servant of Elohim, who is in heaven, go forth from amidst the fire and come hither before me. And Abram hearkened to the voice of the king, and he went forth from the fire and came and stood before the king. And when Abram came out, the king and all his servants saw Abram before the king with his lower garments upon him, for they were not burned, but the cord with which he was bound was burned. And the king said to Abram, How is it that thou was not burned? And Abram said to the king, The Elohim of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, and who has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire into which thou didst cast me. And Haran, the brother of Abram, was burned to ashes, and they sought for his body, and they found it consumed. Exactly what judgment will do at his coming. He will come as fire, and you will either be molded or consumed. And Haran was 82 years old when he died in the fire of Kasdim. And so here's the crazy death of Haran that's briefly mentioned, right? And the king and princes and inhabitants of the land, seeing that Abram was delivered from the fire, they came and bowed down to Abram. And Abram said to them, do not bow down to me, but bow down to the Elohim of the world who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways, for it is he who delivered me out of this fire, and it is he who created the spirits of all men, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world. And it is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain. Dang! Abram 38 just as a beyond perfect summary of this entire message. Is it not? It is he that will deliver those who trust in him from the fire. That's what this story is about, especially in these latter days. Verse 39. And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and princes, that Abram was saved from the fire, and that Haran was burned. The king gave Abram many presents, and he gave him his 2 head servants from the king's house. The name of one was Ani, which for whatever reason we don't really hear about him again. And the name of the other was Eleazar. Well, he's mentioned briefly by name in the canon as well. And now ending in verse 40. And all the kings, princes, and servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl. And the king and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. So I read all of this because not only is this the storyline that we're reading from Genesis that was mentioned, but it also answers a lot of questions that isn't given to us in the canon. We see right here, let's go to the precept I have, Genesis 15:2, and Abram said, Adon Elohim, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is Eleazar of Damascus? We see that Eleazar, where did he come about? He was a gift from Nimrod. And let me see, when looking at the last verse here, the last couple of verses in verse 40, verse 30 and 40. In Jasher, this is chapter 12, it mentions how this is where Abraham acquired his wealth. By the end of this Torah portion, chapter 13, we're going to see Abraham and Lot having to divide up because they have so much livestock. They have so much possessions. And where did all that come from? This is where it started. This is where Abraham gets his first servants, at least recorded servants, and he gets his abundance of wealth happens right here in this story. So we answered the death of Haran. We understand where Eleazar came from and where he gets his abundance of wealth right here in this section of the book of Jasher. So now going to the comparison of the story with Abraham walking in the midst of the fire. Daniel 3, 23 through 26. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar, also the king of Babylon, just as Nimrod, right, was astonished and rose up in haste and spoke and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they had no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the son of Elohim, an angel. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, ye servants of the Most High Elohim, come forth and come hither. Then the 3 came forth of the midst of the fire. Nothing new under the sun. It's like the more you read, the more you know. You keep seeing things repeat. You see how the Most High works over and over and over again. All right. Back into the canon. Genesis chapter 11. Now we're going to read, we're at verse 29. And Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. Abram's wife was named Sarai, and Nahor's wife was named Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran. Both of them, we're going to read, are the daughters of Haran, who was the father of both Milcah and Iscah, which I think that's supposed to be, I don't know why they didn't mention Sarai right here, but we'll get that in the book of Jasher. But Sarai was barren. She had no children. All right, so let's go to the book of Jasher. And we're going to go to chapter 9. Chapter 9, 1 through 3. And Haran, the son of Terah, Abram's older brother, took a wife in those days. And Haran was 39 years old when he took her. And the wife of Haran conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Lot. And she conceived again and bare a daughter, and she called her name Milcah. And she again conceived and bare a daughter, and she called her name Sarai. Everyone that's in the story with Abraham, the Lot and Sarah, are from his older brother that passed away, Haran. All right. And now let's finish the chapter, verses 31 through 32. And Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of Abram, and they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans for the land of Canaan. But when they arrived in Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. All right. Back in the book of Jasher, now we're going to chapter 12. And we're going to be reading verse 58 through 70. So I just told y'all that Terah worked under Nimrod. He was a prince of hosts. So how did Terah end up leaving with Abraham? Let's cut to that point here. So we're starting off, Nimrod just got a terrifying dream. And one of his counselors, Anuki, gives him advice. This is where we're starting off now. So this is well after Abraham's out of the fire, and there's Abraham and Terah is still in the land of the Chaldeans, Babylon, right? And this is where we start off reading. So we're going to read the remaining of this chapter of 12, 58 through 70. And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuki, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram and bring him before the king to suffer death. So Nimrod gets another dream, and yes, it's about Abram because Abram needs to be forced out. This is the Most High's doing. He's forcing Abram to go out so he can fulfill his purpose. Verse 59. And Eleazar, Abram's servant, whom the king had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king and heard what Anuki had advised the king and what the king had said to cause Abram's death. And Eleazar said to Abram, hasten, rise up and save. Zoom in a little bit more. And save thy soul, that thou mayest not die through the hand of the king. For thus did he see in a dream concerning thee, and thus did Anuki interpret it, and thus also did Anuki advise king concerning advise king concerning thee. There we go. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Eleazar, and Abram hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem. And he concealed himself there and found a place of safety. And the king's servants came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. And they searched throughout the country, and he was not to be found. And they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be met with. And when the king's servants could not find Abram, they returned to the king. But the king's anger against Abram was stilled, as they did not find him. And the king drove from his mind this matter concerning Abram. And Abram was concealed in Noah's house for 1 month, until the king had forgotten this matter. But Abram was still afraid of the king. And Terah came to see Abram, his son, secretly in the Noah. And Terah was very great in the eyes of the king. As we know, he's prince of the host, right? Still, obviously, needs separation from all of that. I, at least to my understanding, I don't remember Terah being separated from Nimrod at this point yet. And Abram said to his father, dost thou not know that the king thinketh to slay me, to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of his wicked counselors? Now whom hast thou here, and what hast thou in this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we may be delivered from his hand, lest thou perish also through him in the latter days. Dost thou not know, or hast thou not heard, that it is not through love that Nimrod giveth thee all this honor, but it is only for his benefit that he bestoweth all this good upon thee? And if he do unto thee greater good than this, surely these are only vanities of the world. For wealth and riches cannot avail in the day of wrath and anger. Now therefore hearken to my voice, and let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of reach of injury from Nimrod, and serve thou the Adon who created thee in the earth, and it will be well with thee, and cast away all vain things which thou pursueth. And Abram ceased to speak, and when Noah and his son answered Terah, saying, true is the word which Abram has said unto thee. Man, could you imagine that room? Noah, Shem, and Abram or Abraham all in the same room? Wow. It's all about like take that counsel, Terah. And that's exactly what he did. Terah did take the counsel. Verse 70. And Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abram. And Terah did all that Abram said. And us waking up in the truth amongst Babylonians, how hard It had to be for Terah to humble himself and listen to his son. That's a hard thing to do. We're witnessing it. Parents ain't looking at their children for advice or counsel, guidance. Maybe Noah and Shem helped by backing up Abram, but Noah and Shem been righteous, and Terah decided to obviously be a counselor of Nimrod. But, even though Terah has done some wicked things, he's been given an opportunity to repent here, even after throwing his son under the bus. And he hearkens and humbles himself. So let the Most High show mercy to whom he chooses to show mercy to. Because I know that some people go, oh, man, Terah had an opportunity after. But that's the point. Haran was lukewarm. Terah just needed some time. And now he has humbled himself. And Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from the Adon that the king should not cause Abram's death. And then we're going to continue. I'm going to read the first 3 verses of chapter 13 of Jasher. And Terah took his son Abram. It says Terah took his son, but, it really, I guess, respecting the father in this matter that they went together. But we see how it's read. Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with Elohim in men, and that the Adon, his Elohim, was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instructions of the Adon and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adjourned to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years, and at the expiration of 3 years, the Adon appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Adon, who brought thee forth from Kasdim, and deliver thee from the hands of all thy enemies. And that is where chapter 12 of the book of Genesis begins. The calling to Abram. All right. Woo! That was chapter 11. This is a very front-heavy Torah portion. Chapter 12 and 13 is not long at all, but chapter 11 was jam-packed. A lot of good information and understanding given in that. I enjoy chapter 12 because, chapter 1, chapter 12, the chapters that just is filled with a good information that is layered throughout history of the canon. I love it. All right. Let's get it. Chapter 12. Yeah, I'll go ahead and continue reading here. We're going to read 1 through 8. Then the Adon said to Abram, leave your country, your kindred, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. So Abram departed as the Adon had directed him, and Lot went with him, Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. And Abram took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions and the people they had acquired in Haran, and set out for the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the oak of Moreh at Shechem. And at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. And the Adon appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. So Abram built an altar there to serve the Adon, who had appeared to him. From there, Abram moved on to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built an altar to the Adon, and he called on the name of the Most High. Yeah, we're going to stop right there at verse 8, and we'll go to chapter 13 of the book of Asher. We will read verses 3. I wasn't even supposed to read verse 3 there. So we're reading verse 3 through 10. I read verse more. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and read verse 3 again here, because that's where we left off. And Abram remained in the land 3 years, and at the expiration of 3 years, the Adon appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Adon who brought thee forth from the land. Brought thee forth from Ur-Kasdim and delivered thee from the hands of thy enemies. Now, therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice and keep my commandments, my statutes, my laws, then I will cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of thy hands, and thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife and all belonging to thee, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there, and I will go there, and I will there be unto thee for a Elohim. I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife belonging to him, and went to the land of Canaan, as the Adon told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan in the midst of the city, and he pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And the Adon appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I give unto thee, to thy seed after thee forever. I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. And Abram built an altar in the place Elohim has spoken to him, and Abram there called upon the name of the Adon. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in the year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram, in all the days that Noah lived, etc., etc. Verse 10, and Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he and his father, my goodness, his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the land, from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah, his father, and Lot, the son of Haran, and all the belonging to them dwelt in Haran. All right, so this time Lot did not come with him, because we will have the situation in Egypt and whatnot, and then we will see that Lot will come with him the second time he goes to the land of Canaan. All right, so verses 1 through 8, that was parallel with Jasher 13, 3 through 10. All right, so now we're continuing with verse 9 in chapter 12. And Abram journeyed on towards Negev. Now there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "Look, I know that you are a beautiful woman. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Please say you are my sister so that I will be treated well for your sake, and on account of you, my life will be spared." And so this is an interesting story that is repeated multiple times. And for whatever reason, why Abram was so afraid, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not there at his time. I don't know how ruthless things are. And after walking in fire, but we'll touch on this more in a bit. We're gonna finish reading this chapter though, and then we'll come back. So verse 14. So when Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman was very beautiful. When Pharaoh's officials saw Sarai, they commended her to him, and she was taken into the palace of Pharaoh. He treated Abram well on her account, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants, and maidservants, and camels. The Adon, however, afflicted Pharaoh in his household with severe plagues because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and asked, "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave his men orders concerning Abram, and they sent him away with his wife and all his possessions. Here's another story that confirms how Abram received so much wealth. From Nimrod to now Pharaoh, Abram is a beyond wealthy man of cattle, manservants, and maidservants. Okay, so let me see. So now let's go to Genesis to see the story happens again, and Abraham gives a little bit more, just a little foreshadowing of Genesis 20 here, verses 1 through 3 and then 11 through 12, as you can see. And Abraham journeyed from thence towards the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and adjourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." So it's the same exact story, different people. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. And Elohim came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife." Now verse 11. And Abram said, "Because I thought, surely the fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet, indeed, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." And as we see, it's the daughter of the father because it's his son's daughter, which he is still the grandfather of Sarah. So you see what Abraham's doing here. The only thing I can think of what Abraham is doing brought me to Matthew 10:16. "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves." Because obviously he's comparing the Egyptians as wolves. Like there's no fear in them, right, of the Most High, so they're going to be ruthless. "Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." that's what this story reminds me of. Abram's like, I'm going to allow the Most High to do his thing, and I'm just going to be wise as a serpent, if you want to call it, in this matter. All right. So now we're going to go and we're going to read a good little bit in Jasher chapter 15, verses 3 through 33. Let us read. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook of Mizraim, Egypt. And Abram beheld his wife Sarai, that she was very beautiful. And Abram, let me make sure, okay. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, since Elohim has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away, for the fear of Elohim is not in these places. Surely then thou shalt do this. Say thou art my sister to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Egypt on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, if the Egyptians ask thee concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. And yet with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai, placed her in a chest, and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. And Abram and all belonging rose from the brook of Mizraim and came to Egypt. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Egypt, and when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's son approached Abram, saying, what hast thou here? Yes, which we have not seen. Now open thou the chest and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, this chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, it is a chest of precious stones, give us the tenth thereof. Abraham said, all that you desire give, but you must not open the chest. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to Sarah, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai, the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, the tidings concerning her. Man, Abraham, the wife has got to be just drop dead gorgeous, per se, right? And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife, and he prayed to the Adon to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. Sarai also prayed at that time and said, O Adon Elohim, thou didst tell my Adon Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. we have done that which thou didst command us, and left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Adon Elohim, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. Hearken to the voice of Sarai. And the Adon sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of the Adon was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, do not fear, for the Adon has heard thy prayers. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, what is that man thee whom brought thee hither? And she said, he is my brother. And the king said, it is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent Abram silver, gold, and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men, servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house, and the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified and refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night. And the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night, the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. He removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her, and said to Sarai, tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, this man is my husband. And I said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid lest thou shouldest put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, what is thou hast done to me? Why didst thou say, she is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy wife. Take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle and men servants and maidservants and silver and gold to give to Abram, and he returned unto him by his wife. And the king took a maiden he begot by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, it is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. And Abram rose, and he and all his belongings to him went away from Egypt. And Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. Woo! That was a mouthful. And all right, so we read all the details that's now happened from our baseline storyline in Genesis 12. all the details of how it unfolded in Egypt. But then at the end here in the book of Jasher, we see where Sarai receives the handmaid of Hagar, even though it doesn't mention her by name. So let's go to the very next chapter, chapter 16 of Jasher, verse 24 through 25, where she is mentioned by name. And when she saw, 1 second. Man. And when she saw that she was bare, she bare no children. Man, 1 second. Something in my throat now. Whew, excuse me. And when she saw that she bare no children, she took her handmaid Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her, and she gave her to Abram, her husband, for a wife. So this is obviously foreshadowing. We're just pointing out that this verse right here is the connection verse that Hagar is the maiden whom Pharaoh gave. And then now, just for kicks, verse 25, for Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. So, hey, Hagar, according to this, was a righteous woman. So, shouts out to Hagar from going from being in that Pharaoh's house to following the ways of the Most High, because that was the ways of Sarai in Abram's household, right? And so, I love the book of Jasher. You know, it connects some dots on where did Hagar come from, and now we know. And yep, and that is the conclusion of chapter 12 of Genesis. All right, chapter 13, the last chapter of this Torah portion. Verse 1. So Abram went up out of Egypt into Negev, he and his wife and all his possessions, and Lot was with him. And Abram had become exceedingly wealthy in livestock and silver and gold. And we just read why, right? From Negev, he journeyed from place to place towards Bethel until he came to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had formerly been pitched, to the site where he had built the altar, and there Abram called on the name of the Adon. Now Lot, who was traveling with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was unable to support both of them while they stayed together, for they had so many possessions that they were unable to coexist. And there was discord between the herdsmen of Abram and the herdsmen of Lot. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land. So Abram said to Lot, please let there be no contention between you and me, or between your herdsmen and my herdsmen. After all, we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Now separate yourselves from me. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left. Verse 10. And Lot looked out and saw that the whole land, the whole plain of Jordan, all the way to Zoar, was well watered like the garden of the Most High, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Adon destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose the whole plain of the Jordan for himself and sat out towards the east. And Abram and Lot parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, but Lot settled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked, sinning greatly against the Most High. All right. So we have the traveling back to Canaan and a friction of cattlemen with Lot's folks. And we're going to read what happens in the book of Jasher, chapter 15. We're going to go to 15, verses 34 through 47. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, herds, and tents, for the Adon was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And let's remember this. I'm going to go ahead and just straight up tell y'all. Everything that's been given a lot, it straight up says on account of Abram. We're going to see right here in this story, foreshadowing to remember Lot's wife, that Lot and his family isn't righteous like Abram and his family. But let's read it. Verse 36. And when Abram was dwelling in the land of the herdsmen of Lot, quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, so the Canaanites. But the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. The people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. You know, it's trickling down. If the root isn't good, how can the rest of his belongings produce good fruit, right? Verse 39. And Abram said to Lot, what is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable, or despisable, whichever, to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan? And why wilt thou do this unto me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot will not listen to Abram. Y'all see what I'm saying? Lot is a close nephew to Abram, but that doesn't mean he was a righteous man. And he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said unto Lot, how long wilt thou be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are. But I pray thee, separate from me, go choose a place where, one second, thou mayest dwell with thy cattle and all belonging to thee, but keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy, and be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do any injury to thee, foreshadowing, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes towards the plain of Jordan, and he saw that the whole of this place was well watered and good for men, as well as affording pasture for cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent and dwelt in Sodom, and they were separated from each other. And let's really think about how wicked Sodom, which we're going to do a quick little recap of how wicked Sodom is. If Lot is going to dwell by a place that is as wicked as Sodom, what does that say about him? And Abram dwelt in the land of Mari, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there. And Abram remained in that place many years. And so now let's go to a very quick preview of the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to go to Jasher 18, and there's like 2 full chapters on it. But like I said, this is a lot of reading from the narrator of the Torah, and we're in Genesis, so we're only going to take so much here and there that's on the storyline here. But a quick snippet in Jasher 18, 11 through 16 reads, in those days, all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and of the whole 5 cities were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Adon. And they provoked the Adon with their abomination, and they strengthened and aging abominably and scornfully before the Adon. And their wickedness and crime in those days great before the Adon. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, about half a day's walk, and in it there were fountains of water and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah went there 4 times in the year. Looked like the 4 seasons, like 4-season festivals type deal, with their wives and children and all belonging to them. And they rejoiced there with timbrels and dances. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all rise and lay hold of their neighbors' wives, adultery, covetousness, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his wife and daughter in the hands of his neighbor, and did not say a word. And they did so from morning to night, and afterwards returned home, each man to his house, and each woman to her. So they always did 4 times in a year. Also, when a stranger came into their cities and brought goods which he had purchased with a view to dispose of there, the people of these cities would assemble, men, women, and children, young and old, and go to take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until an end to all the goods of the owner which he had brought into the land. So, I mean, like I said, covetousness, adultery. In modern day, this is the first sin of sharing each other's wives. These are swingers, right? That's the term that can be used. That's wickedness. That's of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the book of Jasher I'm reading from right now. And then we see them, I mean, have to open up the whole book. Sodom and Gomorrah can't even get past the basic 10 commandments. Very, very wicked people. And on that note, we go to the canon that briefly mentions some of their sins and wickedness. In Ezekiel 16, 49 and 50, behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom, pride, fullness of bread. An abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. As we just read, they do the opposite. They make people poor and needy. They steal from them. Verse 50. And they were haughty and committed abominations before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw good. Also in Jude chapter 1, verse 7, even as Sodom and Gomorrah in the cities about them, in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of the eternal fire. What they're doing is an example. You want to steal, you want to swing, be a swinger and trade wives. This is an example of what will be your judgment if you walk in the lifestyle of Sodom and Gomorrah. All right. So we have the recap on what went down between Abraham and Lot for them to part ways. This brief understanding of the wickedness of Sodom that Lot chose to live amongst. And now let's finish chapter 13, verses 14 through 18. After Lot had departed, the Most High said to Abram, now lift up your eyes from the place where you are and look to the north and south and east and west. For all the land. Oh, excuse me. I wanted to make sure I was sharing. For all the land that you see, I will give you and your offspring forever. I will make I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if one could not count the dust of the earth, then your offspring could be counted. Get up and walk around the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and went to live near the oaks of Mamre of Hebron, where he built an altar to the Most High. Let me look in other let me see. Yeah, in other translation, it says after Lot had departed. Let's go to the KJV over here, verse 14. And the Most High said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him. When did the Most High call to Abram to prepare a covenant to be made with him? After Lot was separated. I'm here to tell y'all, Lot represented someone that was not in the fold. The Most High could not use Abraham the way he needed to use him. The Most High could not be in union with Abram, with Lot there. Lot had to be removed. And I say this because this is a message. This is a message within the story. This is how the book works. Everyone has that family member that they're not a bad person, but you know that you're lifting them up and you're holding them together, but they just keep messing up. They don't really take your counsel. You're too busy supporting them. The Most High said, enough. Lot, you got what you got, go. So I can now speak to my son and we can get to real business. Not just be building wealth and getting out into the wilderness. Now it's time to build a covenant that will come forth from this man, the seed that will save the entire earth. Sometimes for you to take a step forward, you got to remove something or someone from your life. I'll just put that there on the table, and you can eat that whenever you're ready. All right? You're not here to be a savior. You're not here to be like, I got to help this person. No. Lot's a grown man. He ain't telling you to leave your children. And heck, even if your children are grown children, at some point you got to let them go. This could also be talking about not just people. Let's talk about things, possessions, jobs. Job that is not giving you the Shabbat off. I spoke about this many times. Abba's waiting on you to do what you need to do so he can allow you to grow and to be the person that you're supposed to be. All right. And I actually skipped ahead there, but we'll go to it. I skipped ahead because it's the first verse. Deuteronomy 28:9. And by no coincidence, we are called to be holy. Deuteronomy 28:9. And the Most High shall establish thee an holy people. Holy literally means set apart. He established a people that are to be separate, holy unto himself. Oops, my bad, I forgot to share it. Holy unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments. That's what he told Abram. If you will keep the commandments, separate yourself from Lot. Well, he didn't say stay away from Lot. I was just saying he needed to separate himself from Lot to be called upon to fulfill his mission. But in the meantime, it was him keeping the commandments. All of what we're reading with in the story, what I'm trying to convey is that this is a story of Abraham's life that is a testimony for each and every one of us. Everything that Abraham's going through, we're going through. We will go through the fire. We are going through the fire, just like Abraham went through the fire. We are being called out of darkness, just like Abraham was called out from the Chaldeans of Babel. Are we not in Babylon? And then we shall separate ourselves once we come to the truth of his commandments. Do we see the story come alive in each and one of our lives? This is what we have to do when we read scripture. It's not cool story, bro, and close the book. If you're not seeing yourself when you're reading these stories, then you are just reading. You're not actually taking in the message, which is what the stories are about. This book is bigger than Abraham. Every person in this book is an example of what you should do or what you shouldn't do or what you should expect because Abraham went through it. And he was righteous. Am I better than Abraham that I shouldn't go through the fire? Everybody wants to complain and murmur like those in the wilderness from Egypt. The Most High provides. You're no better than Abraham. You're no better than Joseph. Joseph was a servant. He was imprisoned. How many of y'all was falsely imprisoned and kept the faith? So many people that has gone through way bigger trials than what you have gone through, and you're murmuring. That's what this book's about. You better put on your armor and get to work. All right. So on the other part of the last few verses of Genesis 13, after he was separated and offered the land as a covenant to his offspring, we see here that I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if one could count the dust of the earth, then your offspring could be counted. And right here it doesn't mention the stars, but the stars are mentioned multiple times with the covenant as the dust and the sand at the seashore, right, shall be his seed. And I wanted to take a moment to go into the book of Enoch, chapter 43, verses 1 through 2 here. Let me zoom in. Oh, 1 second. Oh, this is a different translation. They combined it. Oh, let me see. Okay, I'll just 43. I think it's 1 through 4. I think it is translation. And again, I saw lightning in the stars of heaven, and I saw how he called them all by their names, and they heard him. So we're talking about the stars of heaven. And I saw that they were weighed on the scales of justice according to their light, according to the width of their places in the day of their appearance in their course. One flash of lightning produces another in their courses according to the number of angels. In their fidelity they preserved among themselves. And I asked the angel who went with me, who showed me what was secret, what are these? And he said to me, the Adon of spirits has shown thee a picture of them. These are the names of the just who dwell on earth and believe on the name of the Adon of the spirits to all eternity. Did y'all catch it? The promise that your seed shall be as the stars of heaven, shall be as the dust of the earth, the sand at the sea. This is the promise of Abraham's seed. The stars in heaven, your name's already on one. This is literally what Enoch is saying. Your name is on one of the stars in heaven if you shall endure till the end. Let's carry that over to Psalms 147:4. He telleth the number of the stars. He calleth them all by their names. Remember, you shall receive a new name. That name has already been named because he knows the end from the beginning. How amazing is that? And I want to end in 2 Baruch. This is chapter 51. Reading from a PDF because one of the sites, the pseudepigrapha site is bugging. So I use this PDF. 51 of 2 Baruch, verses 9 through 11. Here, I'll zoom in. This verse is just such a nice way to end this Torah portion. And time will no longer age them, for they will dwell in the heights of that world, and they will be made as the messengers and be made equal to the stars. And they will be changed into any form they desire, from beauty into loveliness, and from the light into the splendor of glory. For the extents of the garden will be spread out before them, and the beautiful majesty of the living creatures beneath the throne will be shown to them, as well as all the host of the messengers. Those who presently are held fast by my word, lest they show themselves, and who are restrained by my command. You see how everything keeps talking about, those that are keeping the commandments, those that are righteous will inherit the kingdom, so that they may stand firm at their places until the time of their arrival has come. Woo! And that being said, Shabbat Shalom Yasharallah once again. And thank y'all for joining me. Week 4 of this Torah portion.